Good morning, guys. Wow, wasn't that an awesome story? I feel like I don't even need to come up here anymore. I'll just leave it with what Evan said. That was awesome. If you don't know me, guys, my name is Bree, and I am going to be talking to you this morning. And if you haven't guessed yet, we are speaking about serving. All right, now I'm going to tell you a short story, not even about myself, about my friend Molly here. Thanks for sitting in the front row. That's awesome. So Molly is one of our awesome team members who serves on creatives. She's part of Fuel. She sometimes helps with the A team. You did lights for a while. You've been everywhere. And Molly, when she was a young'un, 5 years ago? No, I don't know how long ago. She used to tell people, I want to grow up to become, my dream is to become a servant. And you might think, interesting choice of career, Molly, because a servant is generally something we don't aspire to be. Like, who wants to be the person that picks up after everyone else, that does all the odd jobs, that does the dirty, gross jobs? No one wants to be a servant. That's the role, like when you're a kid and you're playing mums and dads or kings and queens, the youngest sibling or the least popular friend, it's like, oh, you can be the servant. There you go. We don't really want to be servants, right? And to Molly's credit, she didn't actually mean a servant. She thought that the people who serve in cafes and restaurants, who we might know as waitresses, were in fact servants. So no offense if you're a waitress, if you've ever been a waitress, I was one once, it's okay. Now, why is it though that we see serving or becoming a servant as something that's maybe a little bit negative? Why is it that we think, oh, I'm not too sure about that? Because I want to paint a picture for a moment. What would happen just here within these walls if none of us served? It wouldn't be the prettiest picture, right? I think there would be a lot of really bored and disconnected kids in our community because there'd be no Radiate, there'd be no Fuel, no Salt Holiday program, no camps, no hang zones. There would be no life groups really during the week, nowhere for you guys to come and connect on a weeknight either here or at someone's house. There would be no events. There would be no block parties. There'd be no Christmas productions, no beach days. Church on a Saturday would look super different, right? Because we'd come here and actually there'd be no singing because we wouldn't have people serving as singers or band members, and there'd be no creatives. There wouldn't be anyone running the tech desk at the back over there, and I mean, that could be okay because there'd also be no one on the cameras, so it wouldn't be filmed. You guys would probably have to go grab your own chairs from the cupboards over there, and when you come in, there'd be no one to greet you or welcome you, pull your kids in a little green wagon. There'd be no coffee or hot chocolates to grab, and definitely no snacks or lunch after church. And if you needed a ride to get here, sorry, no one's serving. We can't help you. But let's even think bigger than this. What would happen in our neighborhood and in each of our lives if no one served? There would be a whole lot of needs that are not met, right? There would be a lot of people whose cars never got fixed, whose lawns didn't get mowed, maybe whose furniture didn't get moved when they were moving house, people who never got meals brought to them when they actually couldn't afford to do the food shopping that week. Maybe there would be kids that never got a place to stay for a night when they needed somewhere safe. There would be a whole lot of isolated and lonely people, still isolated and lonely. It's not a nice picture, is it? So I've been trying to figure it out. Why is it that we often have these kind of negative or like feelings about serving? Maybe we might be thinking, oh, actually, I don't need to serve. Like, I don't have anything to bring. Like, I can't sing like these guys, and I'm not very technological, and I'm not an extrovert. We make these excuses of why we can't do things, or maybe it's that we are serving and we're thinking, man, I need a break. It's a busy season of life. I just need some time out. Someone else can step up for once. I've had enough. Or maybe we're thinking, I just don't feel like serving. Okay, on to my next thing. There's all these reasons why we are so averse to becoming a servant. So today we're going to have a look at a story in the Bible where Jesus becomes a servant to his disciples, his crew. And we're going to have a look at what he says about this whole thing. Now, if maybe it's your first time here or you've not been to church in a while, then I hope that today, if you don't know much about Jesus, you actually get to meet him. And you get to see his character and see what he's all about. And if you are someone who's come along for a while, you're a fully devoted follower, then I hope actually today you're really challenged and inspired by this story as well. So before we get into it, I'm going to give us some context, all right? Because I want us to imagine that we're all there in this story with Jesus, okay? So we're going to pretend we're all in Jerusalem, okay, in the Middle East, a few thousand years ago, in the ancient times. And it's actually the night before Jesus is going to be taken away and crucified and killed. So it's like right at the crux of this whole story, okay? We're right in the midst of it. And he's actually hosting like a dinner party, I guess, with all of his friends, all of his disciples. And they've hired out this little kind of upstairs room to have their own little private dinner function. So let's go and see what happens. I've brought my special old little Bible from home and set up our little story time area over here today, so you guys can join me in Jerusalem over here. And I love how I put a paper in my Bible to find where I needed to open it to. I didn't think that through. There's way too many papers in here. All right. So we're going to be reading today from John chapter 13. And it says this. Just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that the time had come to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his dear companions, he continued to love them right to the end. It was supper time. The devil, by now, had Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot, firmly in his grip, all set for the betrayal. Jesus knew that the Father had put him in complete charge of everything, that he came from God and was on his way back to God. Now, let's pause here for a second. So we've set the scene. The disciples are sitting around this table. In my brain, it's up here. This is their table. They're sitting around the table, and Jesus is kind of reflecting on what's about to happen. He knows that he is going to have to go through this hard, dark time. And he also knows that Judas, who was one of his faithful followers, was actually about to betray him. Judas had decided that actually he wasn't so sure on what Jesus was about anymore. And the things of this world were a bit more important. So let's see what happens next. So he, being Jesus, got up from the supper table, set aside his robe, and put on an apron. Some versions also say a towel here. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying their feet with his apron. Now, let's stop here for a second. Thanks, Malachi. All right, we're going to have a break from this story for a sec anyway, because I want you guys to think about this. Can I ask, and I want a show of hands, has anyone ever been hiking in Jandals before? Yeah, I know my husband would put his hand up there. That's mainly the main shoe he owns. Now, I think we hiked the Abel Tasman in Jandals, yeah. All right, if you haven't been hiking in Jandals, have you walked around on like a dusty or a gravel road, maybe around a farm, just with jandals or sandals on before? Yeah, I've got some nodding there. Now, I also live on a farm, which I love, and we have some animals. We have a lot of horses, so if I ever go for a walk up the drive or we run up the race, I have to be careful of where I stand, because the horses also get ridden in those areas, and if I'm not careful, I'll be running through a bit of horse poo on my evening runs. Now, let's just think. There's maybe about like 2 to 3 horses on average that go up the areas at my farm each day. In Jesus' time, They didn't have cars or motorbikes or e-scooters. So how they got around was with horses and donkeys and camels. That was their mode of transport. And their income were things like oxen and sheep and cows and goats. So what do you think their road would have been full of? A lot of poo. All right. It's kind of crazy. I don't want to think about it too much. And in these times, this whole foot washing thing was really common, because when you came into someone's house, like how we would take our shoes off at the door, their feet would be washed, because their feet would look a lot like this picture that we've got here. I mean, that's probably even a tame version of what their feet would look like. So in this time, the foot washing was commonly done by a servant. Now, it was pretty standard to have servants. It wasn't like a really cruel thing. And it would always be, though, the lowest servant, like the youngest sibling, the unpopular friend, the lowest servant was the one who would have to do the foot washing, who would have to get all of that dirt and poo off the feet. But here we see Jesus is the one who takes off his robe, puts on the apron, and gets down and starts washing his disciples' feet. We're going to see how these guys react. In verse 6, when he got to Simon Peter, Peter said, "Master, you wash my feet?" Nuh-uh. Jesus answered, "You don't understand what I'm doing now, but it will be clear enough to you later." And Peter persisted, "You're not going to wash my feet ever." And I'm thinking, yep, this makes sense. Good job, Peter. He's like, hold on, this isn't right. Jesus, you shouldn't be down on your knees in front of me trying to wash my feet. This makes sense. So let's check out Jesus' reply. In the next verse, Jesus said, "If I don't wash you, you can't be part of what I'm doing." "Master," Peter says, "not only wash my feet, wash my hands and wash my head." Jesus says, "If you've had a bath in the morning, you need only your feet washed now, and you're clean from head to toe. My concern, you understand, is holiness, not hygiene. So now you're clean. But not every one of you." He knew who was betraying him, and that's why he said, "Not every one of you." After he had finished washing their feet, he took his robe and put it back on and went back to his place at the table. Let's pause here for a moment and actually think about this. Jesus points out pretty bluntly, "Peter, this is about holiness, not hygiene." And then that's when Peter kind of is like, okay, we'll wash everywhere then. And I love where he reminds in here, and he says, actually, don't you notice, I've washed everyone's feet at this table now, but still not everyone is clean, meaning Judas. And I love this because it's such a solid reminder to us, right, that actually we can go through the motions and we can do the right things and we can get our feet washed. But if we haven't actually accepted the grace that Jesus is giving in our heart, we're missing something. We're not quite clean. Let's keep going. In verse 12, then he said, "Do you understand what I have done for you? You address me as teacher and master, and rightly so. That is what I am. So if I, the master and teacher, washed your feet, you must now wash each other's feet. I've laid down a pattern for you. What I've done, you do. I'm only pointing out the obvious. A servant is not ranked above his master. An employee doesn't give orders to the employer. If you understand what I'm telling you, act like it and live a blessed life." Wow. I don't know about you guys, but after reading this whole passage, I feel like I've been kind of like schooled by Jesus. He has all of these like mic drop moments, right? And he says things like, "My concern is holiness, not hygiene. And if you understand what I'm saying, then act like it." Maybe not that sassy, I don't know, but that's how it comes in my head. And so let's figure out what does this mean for us today? What does it look like? What is Jesus trying to say to us about becoming servants? Now, let's go back and look at Peter, because he was the guy who actually spoke up here first and was like, hold on. And if you don't know too much about Peter, he was one of these faithful followers, one of these disciples. And throughout the Bible, he's kind of the most outspoken one. He's always the one that's up doing the kind of crazy rash things there. He's a cool guy. And so he says, stop, wait, Jesus, you can't wash my feet. And what do you think he might have been thinking at that point in time or feeling? I know if it was you guys or if it was me, in that moment, I'd be thinking, ooh, I know what's on my feet. I know where I've been walking today. And I know it's not a pretty picture. Maybe you know that your feet have got, as well as the dirt and the poo, maybe there's cuts or scabs or ingrown toenails, or maybe his feet were really hairy. I mean, feet are gross, right, at the best of times. And imagine what they would be like after a day of walking around out there on these ancient roads. I think Peter might have been feeling a little bit ashamed, right? Maybe a little bit guilty that Jesus, the master, the teacher, the leader, was the one kneeling in front of him to do this menial and dirty task. And I can't help but think, isn't that a great picture of how we often react when Jesus is kneeling in front of us, saying, actually, you can give me your feet. I'm going to wash them for you. I'm going to clean up your mess. I'm going to help you. And sometimes we can feel very ashamed. And we can say, hold on, Jesus. Okay, I'm not going to let you wash my feet. It's not a good thing down there. Maybe we just hide them under the table, for a little bit longer. And we say, Jesus, just, do another lap, wash these other guys, and I'll do some scrubbing. And when you come back around the second or third time, maybe they'll be good enough for you to, do a little splashing of water. But we want to try fix stuff ourselves, right? Before Jesus has to get in there and get dirty. Today, is it your shame or your fear of Jesus seeing your mess that is stopping you from allowing him to wash your feet? What happens next is that Jesus explains this to Peter. He says, if I don't wash your feet, you can't be part of what I'm doing. And honestly, that one line I underlined and colored in my Bible, because that really got to me this week. If I don't wash your feet, you can't be part of what I'm doing. If we don't let Jesus wash our feet, we are missing out. We're missing out on this whole and this full and this free, abundant life. We're missing out on the grace that he is kneeling down and offering us. So what is stopping us? After this, Jesus finishes washing all the feet and he returns back to the table. And he explains and he unpacks why he did this. And this is where we see he instructs them. He says, I've become a servant. I've washed your feet. Now it's your turn. You need to wash each other's feet. You guys need to become servants. He's saying you need to take off your robe. Maybe that means we need to take off our excuses, our role, maybe our own ambitions, and we need to put that aside for a second. We need to put on the servant apron, and we need to kneel down and get messy. Maybe it means stepping into that gap. I don't know if there were servants present at this dinner, but I kind of read it and I think, man, Jesus saw that there was a need. He saw that his disciples needed their feet washed, and he didn't care that that was below him, that wasn't his role or his job. But he put on the apron and he got down there and he washed their feet. He stepped into the gap. Is there a gap that you're seeing? Maybe here, maybe at home or at work, maybe in your friends' lives, and actually you could step into that gap. Do we need to stop step into the gap and move across the room. I've got a couple questions that I really want us to think about. And the first one is this: have we allowed Jesus to wash our feet? Or are we holding on to maybe our past and our mistakes? Maybe we're holding on to our need for control. Maybe it's our image we're holding on to, or doubts, or maybe it's just feelings of resentment or bitterness. Have we received his grace and forgiveness that he's kneeling down and offering? The second question is this: have we put on our apron? Have we become a servant? It's not just, doing the job of a servant, but actually becoming one. Like we said before, putting on the apron, taking off our own robe, putting those things that maybe are important to us aside for a little bit, and helping other people fill their needs, being the hands and feet of Jesus. And lastly, are we serving with dirty feet? This is a question that has really been getting to me this week. Are we serving with dirty feet? Because maybe you guys are like me and you'd call yourself a devoted Jesus follower and you're sold out for the vision and the mission of this place here. And you might find yourself serving a lot and you're giving your time and your energy and money. And can I actually just take a minute to thank you? Because there's no way that we could do all the things that we do here and run a lot of the programs we run without you. We actually need you guys. And God needs you to fulfill his vision for this place. So thank you. But are we serving with dirty feet? Maybe we've allowed Jesus to wash our feet in the past, but now we've just been going through life and we've been serving and we haven't realized our feet are dirty again. We haven't picked up that actually we're serving, but we're really frustrated about it. We're serving, but we're a bit bitter. Maybe we're serving, but we're serving because it makes us feel good or important, or it's a duty and it's an expectation. Maybe we're serving, but going home and then complaining about the serving later. I know that I can place myself in this category. And I know that I don't want to be serving with dirty feet. And I don't think this means that we need to take a break or stop, because the action, the serving, isn't the problem. It's our attitude, it's our heart, right? I think it means we need to ask Jesus to wash our feet again. That we can't serve with dirty feet. And I love that this isn't just a once-off thing. I think we need to get our feet washed every day or every night when we come home. We need to daily actually take on the grace that Jesus offers and surrender our own self, our own robe each day. I've been thinking about this and, serving is great, right? We can all agree. It's going to help others, it's going to fill people's needs, and it is going to make us feel like we have a meaningful purpose in life. But if we're serving without having our feet washed, it's a recipe for a really good life, but not eternal life. And Jesus doesn't want us to miss out on being part of what he's doing. He wants to wash our feet. This is how we experience more of him. This is how we get to become his heart and his will and his actions within our community, within this place, and within the neighborhood, within the city, within the world. So today, I've got a couple of action steps that I want to leave us with. And these are things that I reckon we should write them down. Maybe on your phone, maybe you've got a little notebook in your handbag. Maybe if you don't have a handbag, you could write it on your arm. But these are things that I want us to really remember. And the first thing is this: look at your feet. Take a look at your feet. Do we need to get our feet washed? Do we need to stop and think, have I allowed Jesus in today? The second thing is this: put on an apron. Put on an apron. Become a servant. I read something this week that spoke about two things. It spoke about serving systematically and serving spontaneously. And I loved that. And I think both are super important. When we serve systematically, this is speaking about actually when we are part of a church and we really believe in what this church is doing. Put your name down. Join a team. Serve as part of a roster. So you actually have to show up so many times a week or a month. It's good for us to have to serve when we don't feel like it, when it's not about us serving, when we actually need Jesus' grace to go and serve other people. I think that's the way it's meant to be. Just as important, though, is serving spontaneously. That whole concept of actually waking up each day and thinking, how can I serve my family today? How can I serve the people I work with? Maybe the people that I do life with, the people I go to the gym with, I go to the school with. How can I put on my apron and serve them today? And the last one is this: kneel down and get messy. And I love this. I think this really sums it up. It literally requires us lowering ourselves, right, below someone else, kneeling down, getting uncomfortable. And there's this verse that came up this week in Romans 15, and it says this: each one of us needs to look after the good of the people around us, asking ourselves, how can I help? That's exactly what Jesus did. He didn't make it easy for himself by avoiding people's troubles, but waded right in and helped out. I took on the troubles of the troubled, is the way that the scripture puts it. Even if it was written in scripture long ago, you can be sure it is written for us today. Kneel down and get messy. Take on the troubles of the troubled. Isn't that amazing? And I think that this can be done maybe in a really practical way. Maybe it means putting our hand up and being like, okay, I know you guys need someone to clean the toilets between the two programs on a Saturday. I can do it. Maybe it's saying yes to that role that's really just not your cup of tea, but there's a gap that needs someone to fill it. I think also, though, it means stepping into other people's mess, stepping into the troubles of the troubled. I love how this is, and I think this is what love in action looks like. When we don't just say to someone in need, oh, I'm thinking of you, oh, I hope you'll be all right, but we actually get into their mess with them. Maybe it means that we actually go to their house and have that conversation that goes from midnight till 6 in the morning. Maybe it means that we show up at the mum's house where she's had sick kids for 2 weeks and we clean for her. Maybe it means that we give up our honored time at the gym in the morning to go and drive someone to that doctor's appointment. Maybe it means that we sit with the person in recovery and help them to write their first CV after a life of addiction. Maybe it means driving around the streets at 2 in the morning to look for the vulnerable runaway teenager. It means giving up our time and our money and our energy and our comfortability, right? But think of what is to gain. These examples aren't things that I just dreamt up and made up because I thought they sounded nice. These are things that I've actually seen some of you guys here do. Things that I've seen the ways that we actually do serve one another. And it's incredible. And imagine though, if it wasn't just some of us. Imagine if every one of us today walked out of here, put on our apron, and knelt down and got messy. Imagine if each one of us became a servant. Imagine what just our neighborhood and our inward circle would look like if we went out of our way to serve each other. Imagine what this church and its mission and vision would look like if each one of us signed up to really be a part of it. Imagine what our lives would look like if we spent each morning looking down at our feet, accepting Jesus' grace, putting on our apron, kneeling down, and getting messy. Imagine if serving wasn't just something that we did when we were rostered on, when we had to. Imagine if serving was who we were. Imagine if each of us became a servant. We serve because he first served us. And that's what walking in love looks like. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to miss out on what Jesus is doing in my life or in your lives. Let's pray. God, I thank you for the way that you are there, that you're kneeling in front of us and that you're just ready to pick up the pieces of our lives and put us back together. I thank you that no matter how long or how short we've been walking on this journey with you, or how long or short we've been serving for, that we need your grace and that you're offering it to us every day. I just pray over all of us here, Lord, that we will walk out of these doors and it will be on our hearts to serve others and to see others through your eyes, Lord. I pray this in your name. Amen.